Welcome to Talk It Out with Marla P. Today's guest is Maya Hanks. Maya is a survivor of narcissistic abuse. Maya was married to covert narcissist for 29 years and have recently published a memoir titled Bridemaid. Maya is hoping that her story and her book can help raise awareness about the hidden form of abuse and also help other victims find their voices. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you.
For the listeners, can you please just give your definition of narcissism?
My definition of narcissism. So, a narcissist is someone who is obviously very arrogant, very self absorbed. The world kind of revolves around them.
Mhm.
In my circumstance, my ex husband was a covert narcissist. So, that was a little bit different than normal or regular narcissism. With a covert narcissist, they are all those things behind closed doors. So out in the open, they are charming, generous, kind, anything that a narcissist isn't. And then those narcissistic traits of manipulation and control and just extreme arrogance come out behind closed doors.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that.
I was married to a covert narcissist for 29 years. I got married very young. I was pretty naive. I was 21 when I got married. And so I just didn't really know what I didn't know. And I didn't know anything about
Right.
narcissism or personality disorders. I had never encountered anyone like that and just didn't really have a great understanding that there were people like that out there. And so I think I got swept up at an early age and I was sort of a snowball effect. Narcissistic abuse does not start off as abuse. It starts off very slow and gradual and with a lot of gaslighting and just control tactics and manipulation over the years. You're well into this relationship before you realize that something is very wrong. So I ended up staying with this person for 29 years. And then when I finally was able to get out and untangle myself and do a lot of healing, I decided to write a memoir about my experiences, just hopefully to help other victims out there kind of understand what they're going through and put a name to what they're experiencing.
Awesome. So, can you tell me, as far as like prior to getting married, were there any early signs of narcissistic behavior or?
Yeah, there were, but as far as narcissistic traits, as humans, we all have narcissistic traits, right? And so it's easy to write those things off as you see them because, like I say, we all have those. But
Right.
narcissistic personality disorder is a completely different monster all in and of itself. So I would say, yes, looking back, I did see red flags. I did see that very characteristic lack of empathy. But
Right.
again, I didn't know that that was something I should be looking out for. So I didn't give a lot of credit to these little things I was seeing, and they were little in the beginning. And so
Hmm.
it's easy to just sweep those things under the rug and say, well, everybody has their quirks and it'll be okay. And, once we get married, it'll be better. And you keep telling yourself that. Well, when I get through this next stage of life, we'll be under less stress, it'll be better. But of course, with a narcissist, they don't get better, they only get worse. So
I
yeah, I
see.
did see I did see flags early on, but I didn't recognize them as such.
Right, because you didn't know.
I didn't know. Yes.
I understand that. Okay. Just from your experience and what you went through. So, what signs would you recommend to look for?
Yeah, the first thing is definitely look for that empathetic side of someone. I mean, do you sense a lack of empathy? That's very concerning,
Yeah,
if you
that's true.
do. And pay attention to how this person makes you feel about yourself. That's also a very big warning sign, a big red flag. Do they make you feel like you are less confident, less capable? Do you feel inferior? Do you feel intimidated? Do they intimidate you? Those are
Right.
things to really look out for. And then watch how they treat other people and not necessarily just how they treat people to their face, but behind their back as well. Again, that all plays into that, being able to empathize and see, can they self reflect and see things from other people's perspectives? So, those are things to look out for.
Very good points. So, would you say, as far as a narcissist is a master of manipulation?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
They all kind of use the same playbook, and it's just they have these control tactics
Hmm.
that they are able to control you without you really realizing what's going on. And they do it under the guise of they care about you, they are taking care of you. But there's a difference between taking care of someone and controlling someone.
That
So
is so
they
true.
make their control look like, well, I'm doing this because I love you. When in fact, most of these people are not even capable of love, but it sounds good to say that, right? So they disguise that control as being something good when it really is not.
Mm, that's okay. That's a good, very, very good point. So how does like narcissistic behavior, how did it affect you emotionally?
Emotionally, over time, it just breaks you down, basically.
Mhm.
My self confidence was, zero by the time that I left this marriage. Any boundaries that you come into the relationship with will be completely eroded over time. And,
Mm,
it's not just the mental health and the damage that it does to you mentally and psychologically, but those things also affect your physical health. And toward the end of my marriage, that was kind of the breaking point that I came to. Living under this stress, and there's so much control, there's so much micromanaging, criticizing, critiquing, that you are so broken down, and you kind of live, at least I was living in kind of a fight or flight mode all the time. This walking on eggshells, and the stress will do crazy things to your body.
it
So I
does.
was suffering from chronic pain. I was nauseous most of the time, headaches, extreme fatigue, lack of sleep, sleep
Hmm.
deprivation. And I didn't realize all of these were part of this abusive relationship until I got out. And then it was amazing within about 2 weeks how much better I felt physically. So it does affect you mentally and physically as well.
I can definitely see that. With you being married for 29 years, how did you endure? Like how
Well,
did you stay so long?
that's a really good question. And that's probably the question I get asked the most. I mean, the thing about narcissism is with narcissistic abuse, when things are going their way, they're pretty
Hmm.
happy. They're pretty fun. And, I wouldn't say easy to live with, but, it's manageable. It's when
Right.
things don't go their way, when you tell them no, when you don't want to go
Oh,
along with their plans, that's where it all falls apart. So, as I've said in other interviews, every day wasn't bad. We had
right.
good times. We did
Hmm.
have some good times. Now, all of those good times, even though they had an undertone of tension and stress all the time, but, it was survivable some days. And basically, what I did is I sort of made my life into this math problem where I just told myself basically a good day can cancel out a bad day. And so, I try to focus on those good times. Now, that's very flawed math. That's not true. Um, but that was sort of a coping mechanism to make it through. So you think, well, if they're nice tomorrow, then that will make up for the fact that they were horrible today. But
I see.
29 years was way too long, and it definitely took a toll on me. And I wish I had become educated about this much sooner, and gotten out sooner and had more time to just be free. But,
Yeah,
hindsight is 2020, and
absolutely.
I'm glad I got out when I did.
Right. Oh my. Wow. I can only imagine, dealing with someone, like that in a marriage or any type of relationship. And
Yeah,
I know that
it's
it takes a toll on you emotionally, mentally, and like
it
how you said
does.
physically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think all in all that the best way I can describe it is it's exhausting, completely exhausting. I found myself, I'm thinking 5 steps ahead all the time. How is he going to react if I say this? And what if this happens? And then what's his response going to be? And so you start, I mean, it's like life becomes a chess game where you're
Right.
constantly thinking, planning, even to the point that you start planning what you're going to say. Huge red flags. But again, I didn't really see it like that. And I think everybody wants to feel like they're normal, that their relationship is normal, they're living a normal life. And so I
Right.
think that wanting to appear normal to the outside world, when things like this are happening behind closed doors, we tend to kind of hide it.
That's
And
true.
that's what I did, for a lot of years. You want people to think that you're living a normal life and everything's great and you're happy. So I don't know why we do that. And I think a lot of people do that, but it's hard to admit that something's wrong and that it's not going well and that you're not happy. It's hard to admit that.
I agree. That was going to be my next question. Like, did any of your family or friends like notice any type of change in your behavior due to being subjected to this?
Yeah, my parents definitely. And, they witnessed a lot of it. And it's interesting over the years, they would talk to me about it and say, hey, we don't like this level of control that we see. It's really alarming. And they
Right.
saw a lot of things they didn't like, but because I was, kind of living in this fantasy world, and I guess you could say I was trauma bonded, which is the same thing as if you've heard of Stockholm syndrome, basically the same thing. I would adamantly defend him all the time, and say, well, you just saw him on a bad day. He's really not that bad. He's under a lot of stress at work. And I would just make excuse after excuse. But my parents did notice my personality over the years changed a lot, where I used to be a lot more, I don't know, I was able to stand my ground a lot better. And they noticed over the years that I lost the ability to stand up for myself. So, yeah, they definitely saw it and they were concerned. As far as friends, my ex-husband put on this kind of mask out in public. So everybody thought he was fantastic. He must be the best husband, the best father, the best everything. So I wouldn't say anybody out there noticed any difference in me because they were focused on how great he was. But my parents definitely, yes, they did.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So how did you mask this? I mean, I know you couldn't do it from your parents, but around friends, I mean, was there anyone besides your family, like a good friend that you confided in or someone you
There
trust?
wasn't at the time I was married. No, I didn't really have any friends. It was with my ex-husband, it was more about everything had to be about him. So having friends and really having much of a social life outside of him was, he kind of demanded all of my time, all of my attention. So I certainly didn't have any close friends. We had friends, just like mutual friends, other couples. But no, I wasn't close enough with any of them to actually feel like I could confide in them.
I see. Definitely understand that.
And furthermore, had I confided in any of those people, I honestly don't think anyone would have believed me.
Really? Because of
I
how
don't think so.
because of what he portrayed, like around that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So was it just like walking on eggshells?
All the time. All the
Um,
time. Yeah, and that really is, it creates this level of exhaustion in your body to the point that I was tired all the time. And, for a while there, I thought maybe there's something wrong with me, like health wise. I could not get enough sleep and I could never feel rested. It was the last couple years for the worst. But yeah, that walking on eggshells, that fight or flight, it
mhm.
is exhausting to your body. It really is.
Can be, yes, absolutely. At any point, did you feel like before you knew what it was, did you feel like, was it something I'm doing wrong? Or did you think it
Yeah.
was okay?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because that was his narrative. That was part of the gaslighting. It was, you're so sensitive. Why did that thing that I said hurt your feelings? It shouldn't have hurt your feelings. There's something wrong with you. That was his narrative for years. You're only feeling this way because there's something wrong with you. And I did believe it. I really did for a lot of years. It wasn't until, maybe the last 5 years of my marriage that I started even questioning maybe it's him. It just had never entered my mind that maybe the problem was him and not me. That's how manipulative they are, that they can really make you think and
Mhm.
twist the narrative in your mind. And you
Right.
really do believe that the problem is you and there's something wrong with you. And if you can fix you, then this will be the perfect marriage.
Wow. I agree with that. So, what are the long-term effects of dealing with someone for so many years like that?
I think you, speaking from someone who has gotten out and
Right.
long-term effects that like stay with me. I mean, obviously you've got a form of like PTSD. They call it CPTSD, so it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's what you see in people where it's not just a single incident that's caused the stress, it's over a period of many years. And that's why they call it complex. So
Okay.
definitely some of that, some flashbacks, some certain things will trigger me. They might bring on a kind of a mini panic attack. But I think overall, I can speak for myself and probably others would agree. You become less trusting of people.
I see that.
You kind of assume everyone has an angle, everyone has an agenda. Yeah, you tend to not want to give out a lot of information about yourself because you just don't trust the people around you. So that's a pretty big, it makes it hard to make new friends because you just don't know who you can trust. Yeah,
That's
that's one of the biggest things.
wow. Did you seek any type of therapy or?
I did. So the last year of my marriage, we were actually in marriage therapy. One interesting thing about narcissists is that they actually love to go to therapy.
Are you
And I
serious?
know that sounds nuts, but all of them, they love it because oftentimes they can manipulate the therapist and they use it as a way to kind of get their way. So, by him bringing me to therapy, he thought we could quote unquote fix me. Of course, he was the problem,
Right.
but he doesn't believe that he's the problem. And that was an interesting experience because we went to about somewhere between 8 and 10 sessions together. And fortunately, we had a therapist who was very experienced and she was able to pick up on him pretty quick. So,
Really?
yeah, she was. And that was lucky because most therapists will fall right into their trap. But after about I don't know if it was maybe somewhere between the 8th and 10th session, she actually kicked him out of therapy. And I didn't think therapists kicked you out of therapy. I mean,
Right.
that's how they make their money, right? That's
Yeah.
their job. Their job
Yeah.
is to fix the relationship. Yeah, she actually looked at him right in the middle of the session and said, I don't see a path forward for you guys. And she told him, she said, I can't help you because you are unable to see things from other people's perspectives and you cannot self reflect. So, she said, I can't help you and I cannot continue to take your money because I can't do anything for you. And so she basically told him, don't come back. There's nothing I can do. And that was pretty eye opening for me. I thought, wow, I just watched somebody get kicked out of therapy. Like, how bad do you have to be to get kicked out of therapy? And then after I left, I did seek out another therapist who was kind of specialized in narcissism.
Oh,
And I was in therapy for about a year.
okay. Okay. Wow. That's interesting. You mentioned as far as with your ex-husband, gaslighting. Now, is gaslighting and narcissism, is that one and the same or?
Well, narcissists will all use gaslighting, and it's a tactic for control. Everything with a narcissist is about control. So, gaslighting, you hear that word a lot now, and most of the time when you hear it, it's used incorrectly. I think a lot of people think that gaslighting means basically having a different opinion than someone.
Right.
That's not what it is at all. What it is the narcissist uses it to change the narrative. They twist the narrative. So it's their way of making you think that you're losing your mind, that you're going crazy, that there's
Right.
something wrong with you. So if, for example, I would bring something up and say, this certain thing you did or said really hurt me, he would spin that and say, either that didn't happen,
Right.
or you're remembering that wrong, or you're blowing it out of proportion.
Right.
And, when this happens enough, you start thinking, well, maybe I am. Maybe it is me. Maybe I'm overreacting. And so they cause you to change the narrative in your head to think that when the problem originated with them, they spin it to where you actually believe it's you. Yeah, I remembered it wrong. Maybe I'm going crazy. And that's a common thing that will happen with victims of narcissistic abuse. They will think that they are losing their minds.
Okay. Interesting fact. Wow. So with narcissism, is there different stages of it or?
Not so much different stages, but narcissistic personality disorder is a spectrum. And so it can be less severe or it can be, it's just a range. And then basically at the end of that spectrum, like the most severe NPD person, the next little category is sociopath. And then beyond sociopath is psychopath. So, if it's somebody with severe NPD, they're kind of teetering on that line of being a sociopath. It's scary. They can be scary people.
I can definitely see that. Oh my goodness. So you are the author of the book or the memoir, Bridesmaid. Let's talk
Yes.
about it.
Yeah. So when I left my marriage and, started really delving into narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder, I wanted to read everything I could find about this because it was so shocking to me when I started learning about it. It was almost like someone had been spying on me, had been, spying on my house because it described what I went through and my ex-husband to a T. I just couldn't believe how accurate, down to the tiniest detail. So I wanted to read everything I could on this. And everything that I could find was either written by a psychologist or some sort of therapist. And it was all really good information, but it was also very academic. So I kind of felt like after I'd read about 3 or 4 of these books, they all sort of blended together. It was the same information in every book. And what I really wanted to find was some sort of firsthand account, some sort of like a memoir. And I couldn't find anything out there. So
Okay.
after I had gone through a lot of therapy and done a lot of healing, I decided to try to write a memoir and thinking that, maybe this will be helpful for other people out there who are either in this or trying to get out or have gotten out. Just that firsthand kind of insider point of view rather than it being academic. It's more about what day-to-day life with a narcissist is like. So that was my approach. That was kind of my goal in putting that book out there. And I hope it lands in the right hands of people who really need it and that can benefit from the information.
Absolutely. And when did you publish this book? Well, memoir?
I published in February, so it's fairly recent.
Okay. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. So how is life for you now?
It's very different than it was than
Mhm.
it was a few years ago. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it all out and kind of for the first time I can kind of decide what to do, what I want to do with my life. The freedom is probably a little overwhelming. While it is definitely exciting, for so many years I was conditioned to believe that I couldn't do things for myself, that I wasn't capable, that I wasn't smart, that I just didn't, I could never make it on my own.
Right.
So it was scary, but at the same time, it's exciting. And just having that freedom
Mhm.
to wake up in the morning and decide what I want to do with my day, how I want to spend my day, being able to have all those decisions are my decisions to make. So definitely my life is a lot more laid back,
Good for
a
you.
lot more relaxing. I feel better. It's like I've stepped into a whole new life. So yeah, I highly recommend it for anyone that's living in an abusive relationship. Trust me, there is a better life on the other side of this.
Absolutely. So what was the breaking point for you? What caused you to say, you know what, today is it. I'm done. This is
I
not.
think my physical health was really starting to suffer. I was miserable and I felt like if something doesn't change, this is not sustainable. I was falling apart. It was interesting. I was scrolling through social media one night, late
Mhm.
one night, and I came across a post and it was on Instagram.
Okay.
And it's just a random quote,
Mhm.
and it was addressing the subject of true intimacy,
Okay.
and it said something to the effect that true intimacy is not necessarily physical. It's more about being able to look at your partner and say, I feel safe with you. And I think that word safe, for whatever reason, really resonated with me. And it stopped me on my tracks when I read that quote. And I thought, you know, I don't feel safe. And not only do I not feel safe, I've never felt safe with him.
Oh, wow.
And just that one quote that I just happened to read at the right time prompted me to start doing some research. And I got online and I just started Googling things like toxic relationships and, is my marriage toxic? And even going as far as to think maybe I'm being abused. I really didn't know. I was so conditioned to live that way. I didn't see it as abuse. Of course, now I realize that it was not just abuse, but pretty extreme. But at the time, I was just so, the narrative was so twisted in my mind. But I started doing some research and started learning about narcissism. And yeah, it was amazing how all the pieces came together.
Oh my goodness.
And then when we were at the same time, all this was going on, we were in marriage counseling. And after the counselor kicked my ex husband out of therapy, I actually had a one on one meeting with her afterwards. I
Oh,
was just curious what she would say. And I kind of brought this up. I said, hey, I've been reading about, this narcissistic personality disorder and all of this. And while he's never been formally diagnosed, because narcissists wouldn't be diagnosed, because that would require them to admit there might be something wrong with them, the therapist, wholeheartedly agreed with me. Yes, this is totally what you've got going here. And, she told me, she said, do you want out? And I said, yeah. And she basically told me, you need to leave. This is really, really not good. You need to get out. And so it was sort of the perfect storm. It all sort of came together and the pieces all fell into place. And I just knew that, I had an opportunity and I had to go.
Oh my goodness. You chose yourself.
I did, yeah. I mean, it was that or stay and just succumb to these physical ailments that were plaguing me. There was no way I could sustain. I was just under too much stress. And I do believe, I mean, stress can actually do you in. I mean, it really can break down your body. So I was at my breaking point with stress for sure.
Oh my. So was it just an easy process with getting away?
It was not, no. Leaving a narcissist is very different than walking out on a neurotypical person because these are people that they don't take no for an answer.
Right.
It's their way or the highway.
Mhm.
So they don't get discarded. That's just not how it works for them. It's not in their rule book. So it was interesting, when I first left, he was very much playing the victim and, and kind of down on himself. And he swung between playing the victim and oh, I'm so sorry. Of course, that was not genuine, but basically he just wanted to save face,
Right.
and I needed to come back to protect his image. That's the only reason that he wanted me to come back. When he realized that wasn't going to happen and he wasn't going to get his way, then he did basically a 180 and became vindictive, cruel, drained the bank account so that I would have no money to live on or eat or anything. And in his mind, if he could strip me of all financials, then I would have no choice but to come back to him.
Mhm.
That didn't work because what I did was I moved in with my parents. They were able to support me until we could get some of this stuff figured out. But yeah, I mean, he was going to be perfectly happy to see me on the streets. So it's kind of crazy to think that somebody could really think along those terms. You've been with this person for 29 years and it might anger you that they've left, but you don't wish their demise. But
Right.
he most definitely did. I mean, if I had been homeless, nothing would have made him happier. So it's quite I mean, talk about a pendulum swinging, it's all the way from, I'm so sorry, please come back to, I'm going to drain the bank account so you can't afford to live. It's crazy.
That is, hats off to you for being
Thank
courageous
you.
enough to leave, to walk away, to choose yourself.
It's scary. You don't know what the fallout's going to
Scary,
be.
yes.
At that point, I couldn't predict his reaction. So, yeah, it's a little tense. And I think a lot of people, women especially, end up staying in these relationships because of that fear of the
Right.
unknown. Can I make it on my own? What happens if he deprives me of all of the finances? How am I going to do this? And it is scary, but you can do it. I mean, it is possible. There are resources and there is help out there for people in these situations. It's just finding the help and accepting that help, really.
That's so true. That is so true. Wow. So, what would you say to my listeners who may be experiencing the same thing that you went through? What words of encouragement will you give them?
I would tell them, a lot of people think things will get better. Once the kids are in college and, we enter this new stage of life and then it will be less stressful and things will get better then. Or, when he retires and, we enter that stage of life, it will be better. With a narcissist, it will not get better. If it is narcissistic personality disorder, they only get worse with age. So don't hang on thinking if I stay a little bit longer, if I'm a little bit nicer, if if I give him his way a little bit more, it will be better because it won't be. And I would just say, don't stay. And also don't feel stuck because a lot of women, especially, end
Mhm.
up feeling stuck. They feel like there is no way out for me. And it very well may seem that there's no way out, but you're never stuck. I had a therapist tell me that you are never stuck. There is always a way out, and it may not be the easiest way, but you can get out, you can find help, and there are resources out there. So please don't stay because you feel obligated or you feel like you're stuck and there's no other path because there is.
Oh, oh my goodness. Your story I'm just amazed by your story.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I commend you so much. Wow.
Yeah, it's been a crazy journey, but I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. So, I know that I have a TikTok account where I post a lot of information about narcissism and narcissistic abuse. And I have comments every day from both men and women, but probably more women, saying things like, this is the situation I'm in. This is what's happening to me. I want out. I want help. I need to get out. So I know just from reading all of those comments every day, there are so many people that are in these kinds of relationships. And probably like me, they just got swept up in it and didn't realize what was happening until it almost feels like it's too late. There's a lot of people out there that are living this life, and it's painful to think about people staying in these marriages and relationships for decade upon decade. It's just, you don't have to stay in
That's right.
something like that. Yeah.
That's right. So what is your social media handles?
So my TikTok page is NPD, that stands for Narcissistic Personality Disorder, NPD and me. And I post probably 3 times a day, just a lot of information about narcissism and narcissistic abuse and just a lot of resources. So I hope that that's helpful
I'm sure it
to
is.
people. There's a lot of good information on there. So that's my main social media. And then I have a website, miajhanks.com. And there's a link to my book there and just various information, some interviews, some articles. Yeah.
Okay, it's good. And where can they find your memoir?
Basically anywhere online that books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, and it's available in ebook and paperback. Possibly Audible coming soon, but not yet. Haven't gotten there yet.
I mean, you just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you've encouraged me, and I never really, encountered anyone like that, but some good, informative information here.
Yeah, I think it's not talked about enough.
Right.
And there's just not a lot of education around this. So too much abuse going on out there. I think people need to become more aware.
Awesome. It's been indeed a pleasure meeting you, having, being able to talk with you and for you to tell your story.
Thank
So
you.
much.
Thank you for letting me come on and talk. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if you want to come back at any time, just reach out and you're more than welcome. I really
Oh,
enjoyed the conversation.
great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, awesome. Do you have anything that you want to leave with or?
Yeah, I would just say if you think that, if this sounds like your story, please pick up a copy of my book and hopefully you can find some good information there that will help. And just don't let yourself remain a victim. You can be a survivor instead of a victim.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation on today. I just want to leave my listeners with my motto: when you see the need, plant the seed.